Good evening. Let's call our meeting together, a joint meeting of the Acton School Committee and the Warrant and Finance Committee for the purpose of another budget workshop. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention to you that next week, we have a meeting next week at 6 o'clock, budget meeting. And then following that, we have a school committee meeting. We made some changes to our school board agenda this year to include celebrations of learning so that we could have some things shown to us that were happening in the classrooms, and they've been very good. And so next week, with your permission, what we'd like to do is we'll start our meeting, but then shortly thereafter, because of the fact that we don't know how long we're going to be, because it's a big agenda next week, we'll take a break for a few minutes and let the students come in and do the celebration of learning, do their presentation, and then we'll go right back into the meeting. Anybody have any problems with that? Okay, good. That's next Tuesday. Okay, at this time I will ask our superintendent to distribute the materials.
Okay, this evening, with an amended agenda, we're going to talk about Article 9 revisited and Article 3. Article 3 is, of course, our second largest one, and it will require most of our discussions tonight, but it was brought to our attention that maybe the student transportation budget could be relooked at if, in light of the fact that we did not decide to reuse the late bus item that we put in, that was supposedly was put in last year. We investigated it, and I'll let Kim talk about that a little bit. But the first thing I'm going to pass out tonight is the transportation budget. So I want to thank Mr. Poyant, who was on point, shall we say, and knowing a little bit more about what happened than Kim and I did, because we were not here. So Kim, would you like to show us as a group what you did to make this an even more exacting budget, exacting cost predicted for next year?
Okay, so basically what I did is there are 5 bus runs, and I used the new rate per run that we will have in the contract for next year, which is a 283.83. And we have 175 days scheduled for next year. So that total for the base contract is the 248,351.25. We also get charged for early release days. And next year, we have scheduled, I think, at least 4, including the last day for early release days. But I also put in 2 more just in case we have an early release day due to a snowstorm. And what they do is they charge half the rate of the 283 for early release charge. So when I took that times the 5 run times 6 days, there's my 4257.60. Totaled those together to come up with a new budget of 252,610, which brings it down about $4,000 from last year's budget. So that's how I calculated it.
So you can see we went up the early release days on top of the regular contract, but reduced it by the fact that we had put in an amount last year for the late bus.
And this does not include special ed transportation.
No, those are all done in different transportation lines.
Yeah.
So the field trips are in the 9,200, special ed has theirs, and then regular has, for field trips, are in the regular
This is just our contract here with the bus company. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, that's good.
All right. Okay. The next item that we're going to talk about is one of the real reasons why we're in the education business. We have Article 3, special education, while other articles are extremely important to transport students or to keep them warm or to take care of their cultural needs and other things, this is where, as I say, Article 2 and 3 are where I call the rubber hits the road. We are in the business of in effect, bringing the best possible education to all students, no matter what their needs are. And Joy Kiley is our Director of Special Ed, and she's given the board an executive summary which talks about what our initiatives are this year and what our efficiencies are this year. So I'm going to let her speak to it before I pass out the budget per se. So she's going to give you an overview, and thank you for listening.
Good evening. I'm going to actually summarize my summary, but I'm going to read it so I don't leave anything out, so pardon me for doing that instead of speaking off the cuff. At the Acton School, we provide special education and related services to students with educational disabilities according to federal and state laws and regulations that require school districts to evaluate students suspected as having educational disabilities. And to provide eligible students with individual education programs. Student programming may include reading and math programs, speech and language services, occupational therapy and physical therapy intervention, and other special services. We provide these services in the least restrictive environment. The decline in enrollment, discharge from special ed services, as well as the transfer of special education students with significant needs compels the reallocation and reduction in staff. The superintendent has adjusted direct and indirect staffing levels to address continued decline in enrollment. In special education, some of the major adjustments include the reduction in support staff, the elimination of special education secretary position, and also the reassignment and elimination of 3 educational technicians. The special education secretary position will be eliminated due to the aforementioned decrease in student enrollment. The duties of meeting coordination and file management have been reassigned to the case managers. Over the last 2 years, the Maine Department of Education has streamlined the reporting requirement. Electronic submission of these reports has decreased the need for clerical tasks at the district level. In addition, the general task of lunch coverage and monitoring the end-of-the-day transportation will be reassigned within the main office. These latter tasks were not essential to special education programming. 1 educational technician will be reassigned within the school, and 2 educational technician positions will be eliminated according to the downward trend in the enrollment. I can tell you that in December, our enrollment total K through 8 was at 47, and today we are at 40 due to discharge and the students moving out of the district. Professional development initiatives and retraining of staff. This school year, the special ed department placed a major focus on improving how we serve students with challenging behavioral needs. With the assistance of our school psychologist and an educational consultant, behavior specialist, we have further identified and assessed our actual needs. In addition, some staff will participate in safety care training. I recently attended this training. This was a 3-day training, and now I am able to train others with the support of other trainers who are going to participate in that training. The student support room. The safety care training was an essential component to that because it de-escalates behavior, and it also addresses crisis. So we currently do not have, or we didn't have anyone trained in that area. So now we do. And we have a training coming up, the early release day and the teacher work day, where we're going to train more staff so that we can address and de-escalate these behaviors and also address any kind of crisis that may occur. Where was I? Okay, so it's an essential component to providing behavioral support to selected students and to the success of student programming. In addition, we have determined the need to create a space and further develop the student support room. We will be building capacity within our department by continuing to train the 3 special education teachers in de-escalation and the management of challenging behaviors. 1 of the 3 special ed teachers will take the lead in providing student support via data collection, as well as the lead role in crisis management. And I felt it was really important that we build the capacity within the school, within our department, and not bring a new person in that may be alien to the school and have to reorient. And I felt it would be more effective and more efficient to have our whole department trained, and then, of course, others within the school. The student support room will be a place to plan and process, utilizing a non-confrontational, interactive problem-solving strategy for behavioral instruction. The plan and process format is a step-by-step process that trained staff will implement according to program criteria. This format has been used with students of all grade levels, K through high school, in the school and home settings with success. As the special educators continue to collaborate with the behavior specialists and our school psychologists, the numbers of behavioral incidents have been dramatically reduced across the school. We wish to continue this trend, and the training and the implementation of the student support room will alleviate behavioral problems and prevent them from escalating to a point of crisis. And then I moved to a fun, kind of informative segment, Books, Art, and Music, called BAM. Books, Art, and Music, an outreach program initiated this school year, was offered to Acton School preschoolers on Thursday mornings right here in the library. We are proposing to expand this program from 1 day to 2 days per week. BAM is an excellent opportunity for school staff to connect with parents of preschoolers. The children are exposed to books, participate in hands-on art projects, and experience music. The children demonstrate pre-reading skills and readiness for learning. There is also the potential to pre-screen learning strengths and needs. Research strongly indicates that addressing learning needs with early intervention is a critical key to student success. Thank you very much.
So, unless you have some questions first, well, I'm going to pass out the budget.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of parent participation in your BAM project?
We have on the average 15 kids every Thursday. As many as, I think one day we actually cleaned close to 20.
And the parents stay?
And the parents stay. We do not yet have a transition, although it was requested by a parent this year, of a child who will be going into kindergarten to practice leaving the child a little. And so we've talked about that as the program grows, allowing that opportunity for a parent who has children in the school already, she could go and volunteer in another child's classroom. And those that are pre-K, the year before, would have that opportunity to practice some more independence.
I think it's the same.
But the parent would still be in the building. So,
Is this an expansion to what Virginia used to do?
it is a throwback. Virginia Calvo, a former librarian, did run the Book Buddies program. And my children benefited from that. And so yes, it's definitely an expansion of, and a great tribute to what she had started years ago.
With a kick your name.
Yes, we have a creative staff. But I got to give credit to, I think it was the art teacher that came up with the BAM. It's-
Yes.
So, with this student center, how many, you might have mentioned, and I might have missed it, how many students will that be serving or servicing?
Okay, let me explain that. Originally, we had thought that this was a center where about 13 to 16 students we had identified would go at some point. On further, really thinking about this a lot, I really wanted the case managers, the special ed teachers, to work with these students on the very first level in the resource rooms, as they're doing now, but with more training, to prevent that crisis. The only time, it's a very small room that we have identified now, as you may know, across from the superintendent's office, it's the PT room. That would only be used for crisis intervention, and we have very few incidents of that. So, one special ed teacher will be identified, one we have identified at this point, who has had some training in this and has demonstrated through the students themselves that she has been successful in preventing some of these behaviors from escalating. and all of them done really well. But by meeting the needs of the students at the lower level, we're preventing those students from, or we're catching them early. That's the key. So at the K-2 level. That teacher would be called in the case of a crisis to manage the behavior with the teacher who is the case manager at that point. And hopefully I'm explaining that right. We really looked at this, as, had to really tailor it to this school, where we don't have that many crisis situations. But we need to have it in place, because when we do have a crisis, we need to have a plan. So, again, we're building capacity within the school with the 3 teachers that we have and the ed techs and other staff members. So that other staff members would also be trained in that de-escalation, thereby not, preventing or not hiring someone new and having a behavior specialist who, may not be accepted, quite frankly, in the school community as, someone who is already accepted in our school community.
So you don't have it's not like you're identifying like 13 kids, or it's as an as needed basis?
Well, we
Or
have.
are there some
Yeah.
identified?
We have identified some students who have the need for behavior plan. Not all of them need a crisis intervention, but that's why we have the behavior plan to prevent it. As you know, I mean, all the teachers here are pretty seasoned and do well in terms of preventing behaviors from escalating. The younger kids don't have those skills yet. So, we're starting there. We're working with them all, but the teacher who is at that level will be more trained to handle the crisis situation. She's done a fabulous job in preventing things from escalating. So I think, and they really all have. I mean, across the board, the behavior incidences are down. So I feel between the training that people have had with, now a safety care, and they've been trained in that in the past, with the school psychologist and also the behavior specialists, all working together and wrapping their arms and minds around a kid, we've really done, we've done a lot of work on preventing behaviors from escalating. So I think that everybody should be, I feel I did the responsible thing in looking within our school first, in hoping to bring the skill level up to where it needs to be, and also to create that crisis team.
So is that what's going on in there now? Is kind of like a trial run, is it?
Yeah, and we really have one student who has been schooled, if you will, trained, we've talked to him about that particular room. It hasn't really been a part of anyone else's plan yet. We're moving, we're really a work in progress, Dave, we're really trying hard to do it right. We want to make it right and have everybody trained in the proper way, and not do any damage to children. We want to treat them respectfully. So
it's the one special ed teacher you're talking about who's been identified to take care of this room on an as-needed basis. If they're pulled to be used, what's going to happen to the other kids that they're supposed to be servicing at the time to meet those other IEP needs?
Well, that would be few and far between, and we would have perhaps another teacher or an ed tech fill in for that person. It's not going to be, my belief is that it's not going to be that detrimental to the rest of the students.
Right. If it's few and far between, I guess I'm unclear as to why we need it, I guess.
Well, we need it because when we have an incident, we need to appropriately meet the need of that student, and we haven't been in that position. We have not had that.
It sounds like
support.
she's trying to be proactive, to be able to have a room to put somebody who might be disrupting the whole school.
It's better to have it and not need it than
Right.
to need it and not have it.
Right, and I'm just worried about if we do need it, this one teacher who's been assigned.
Well, it sounds like it could last an hour, it could last 15 minutes, it could last an hour, you know what I mean?
It could last a
It
day or
could last a
so.
day. So, then it takes away from what that teacher is trying to fulfill for other IEP needs.
Well, it's happening now for teachers. So we'll train an ed tech as well, who can also sit and wait if need be. So the teacher can then go in, I mean, we want to meet student needs. We're not going to meet the need of one student to the detriment of others. We're going to meet every student's need.
And if I understood it clearly, what's happening is, we do have you have one lead teacher,
Yes,
but all the other teachers are being trained to do the same thing.
right.
So that one teacher might not have to go every single time to to stay with a student every time, is that what you're saying?
Right. What the case manager, the grade level teacher, will deal with the behavior, and hopefully that will be the end of it. As it stands now, if we have a crisis, we have to call on one of the special ed teachers to back up anyway. I mean, this is not any different than we have in place. But having the program, being proactive, having the training, the behavior should decrease, as we have seen. So we have not seen any behavioral students from the lower grades down in the main office. Those things have been handled at the resource room level. So whether it's a lead teacher on this end or that end, we need to have a backup in the event of a crisis.
And that's really, we do that now. If somebody suddenly gets sick, we shift. Whether I'm covering lunch duty or somebody else has to go in and cover a class, in an emergency, we have to shift.
Right.
What the planning allows us to do is to know who's covering whom
Right.
and what they're going to say and do in that emergency. So it gives us those next level of handling a situation without having somebody also be hired to wait in between situations.
Better known as a standard operating procedure.
An SOP, all right, yes, like in the classrooms. Very good. Is that what your granddaughter said?
No, I used to teach them.
Any other questions before we look at the budget numbers? You pass these out on your row?
I don't know.
Theoretically.
Have these numbers changed from what we were electronically a short time ago?
Good discussion.
No.
Good discussion.
There are people that will say that they would prefer to have us print here on the copier in this building than if they're on their own, based on the cost of print cartridges. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and always make these up, even if I duplicate them. I'll do it anyway.
Good idea.
Thank you.
As in the past, at these meetings, we've asked Kim to take a look at what might be some slight variations on a theme in terms of differences than the usual amounts. And if you look at this budget, you'll find that there are only about 3 items that are significantly less than other items, other than they were last year, and we can explain that. So Kim, why don't you start on the exceptions, and then we'll talk about anything else that's on there that people would like to know a little bit more about.
Okay. So basically, as Joy was stating, we have shifts in personnel. So you're seeing, like Braden, you're going to see shifts in insurances and benefits based on where we're putting employees within the budget. So right down through, you see the Ed Tech group insurance, because 2 of them, we've either shifted to the grant, 1, and then 2 are not in this budget. So insurance is about $18,000 a piece. So if they have full family, so there's one big difference there. On the second, pretty much everything else down through, it's pretty similar to last year. It's when you get in the next page. When you get down to, one of the things we did do under the director's salary is, there's a salary where she works 4 days a week during the school year. And then if there's a summer program, there's a certain amount that goes in for the summer. And we pulled out the summer pay from the grant and moved it into the regular operating grant for more than one reason. One, just so that you see the whole thing, but two, when you put people in a grant, the grant is charged an extra 0.135 on top of it. So it's better to shift contracted labor or programs or other supplies, stuff like that, to a grant instead of people. The other area is the tuition. When we really looked at the tuition, between trying to bring things in-house and using our, like she said, the behavioral person, and our other consultants, bringing them in, our tuition outside in other places would go down. And so there's a drop there specifically. But then we had a little, we've had a little bit bigger jump in physical therapy. And we kind of kept, and then some of the other contracted services, we moved over into the grant as well.
One big difference that you mentioned on the 11th, the meeting that I wasn't at, is that there's 72,000 less in this new budget
Right.
due to the fact that the Gifted and Talented program was misallocated. It was put in Article 3 when it should have been in Article 2.
Two.
Yes. So you'll find that this budget, yes, it's reduced from 977 to 836, or about 140,000. 72,000 of that reduction is now in Article 2.
Tricia's, yeah.
So even though there are some adjustments in Article 2 in terms of some changes in some of the costs, you won't see much of a change from last year's budget because that budget had to absorb the 72,000.
And you put the, excuse me, you put the, when you added the summer salary, you just put it all in one line rather than,
In actuality, I had it in two separate lines, but the software combined them together. Yeah,
okay,
there's basically $6,000 from summer,
right.
the summer salary that is included in this.
I'm just wondering if it should be in a separate line if we can.
Yep.
Because if anything happened and we didn't have a summer program some
Right.
year, then that would be, and would that be paid only in the summer?
Right. So, like I said, last year, it was paid in the summer, but it was paid through the grant.
Right.
And then, it just made a smarter decision to move that into the operating and move contracted services, some of the contracted services in an equal amount into the grant. The local entitlement grant.
So we're still using those funds from the grant for the summer program? Is that what you're saying? We're just not using them for salary? Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
Instead of using it for salary, we're using it for contracted services. So I think it's some of the,
There's some transportation in there, and also, we
The
do pay the
physical.
teachers,
yeah, and the tutors.
but it's tuition.
Yeah.
I mean, tutors, excuse me.
Tutors.
Tutor line.
But I think we also we figured out that there might be more for occupational therapy.
Right.
And
For
that
contracted
amount,
services.
yeah, we put in, so that it balanced. We had, and again, it's more to save on Main State Retirement, that extra grant charge, because if anything you pay a person through a grant is increased more, by 13.5%. So, yeah, so that's good. David?
So what is the special ed director's 13, 14 salary
Okay.
with the summer money? I'm trying to just compare apples to apples, because the 64,
Yep.
what is that, 64,486 is the special ed director's salary with the summer,
Yes, with
the
6,000
summer
in there.
pay
Yeah, so
figured in.
58,186 is for the school year,
right?
and then 6,000 is for the summer.
So going to 13, 14, what is the, was it 6? It shows 56,
Yep.
186.
Right, so going into next year, or going in, is 58,186 and 6,000 per summer.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was it's 58. So I guess what I'm asking is this year it's the 56, 186 plus 6,000 actually for the summer program?
Right.
It's still 6,000, 6,000.
Yes, yes.
Well, when you throw in the tax, they're not the same.
Can you footnote your
Answer is
budget?
yes.
I did, it's in there.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, when you look down.
As opposed to using a new line.
Yeah, I have it as a footnote, and I'm gonna actually, because I had a request for a little bit more detail, and I will detail that a little bit more on that particular line item, on both of those particular line items, actually, so.
Just trying to get my head around this. We have 2 or 3 special ed teachers.
We have 3 special ed teachers, kindergarten through grade 2, and then one attached to the grades 3 to 5, and then 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, there are 40 children in all,
Yes.
what you said.
Well, that's projected, and that could change.
My other question is, I'm curious, I just saw the line here. Out of school, where are we sending students?
We send students to Maplestone and Sweetser day treatment over in Saco.
And your responsibility is also for the high school students from our district?
To a
is that
certain
correct?
degree, obviously I have some management, but they do, the teachers over there case manage, but I communicate and work with the special ed director over there very closely. Transition and making sure their programs are intact, and I attend meetings.
Yeah, but you are not in the classroom? is
No.
that correct?
No.
Now, out of this 836,000, 72 last year was gifted and talented? So that's taken out of the 836?
No, it's taken out of the 977.
Okay. Now, the difference between the 977 and the 836 is about $140,000. So if you take the 72 out of there,
It's a $70,000 decrease.
right, you've got $200,000 less in some of these salaries, which would make this budget actually more than the 977.
No, the opposite. Take the 977, adjust by the 72,000 right off the bat. So that figure would be, if you took the 72,000 out of 977, that's 905. Okay, and then we have 836 against 905. And the 836 is because there are 2 less special ed technicians, educational technicians, and 1 less part-time or 10-month secretary.
And a little
And the
bit of
benefits.
tuition.
Right. So where has it increased?
The budget's
in all the other
decreased by,
places to have taken out all those teachers with benefits and salaries? What's been,
okay, start with the 4th item. 4th item is ed tech salaries, 132 becomes 104. And then below it, group insurance, ed tech group insurance, 80,000 becomes 40,000.
right, I understand that. And that, but I guess I'm just not saying it right.
I think what you're saying is, where is this gonna show up someplace else in the budget, some of that money? And 72,000 of that
Went to
Well-
Article 2.
will show up in Article 2.
Right.
The other 70-some thousand is gone. It's a reduction, the way it's put.
Right. Right, but that's getting rid of there were just a lot of grants and talk about, there were an awful lot of things here, and it wasn't specific or detailed or whatever, and not including the teachers, it seemed like there would be an increase in this, and I'm just trying to find out where and why if the enrollment is going down.
And the tuition, outside tuition goes from 178,880 to 135, and that's a
Right.
significant amount.
Right. But that's still not where anything
How about
is
deferring it
increasing.
for the moment, because I mean, we still even haven't talked directly about the gifted and talented yet.
Okay,
as far as
whatever,
I know.
sure.
It'll be on here.
Okay.
And you'll be able to just read it right off.
So where, you mentioned the special, where is the, I know there's a special ed secretary that's been working part-time here nights doing work. Where is she in this budget? Is that person going to be
No, she's not. in the
here
budget.
next year too?
No, she was working because we had a person on medical leave, and she was working to build a database and also helping us with Infinite Campus, because our secretary was out on medical leave.
Oh, so she's not working anymore? She's
No,
not
she's
working
only,
now?
she's gonna be training us on Infinite Campus, and she just finished the database that I asked her to do when we had our secretary on medical leave, so that's all done.
Oh, so she's not gonna be on payroll next
No,
year?
no, no, she's just a
She was a sub.
contracted service.
Do you know what medical insurance is going to go up for next year, or do you have an estimate?
Okay, here we go. This is it. When it comes to medical insurance, when we first did all the calculations, I called them up and I said, can you give me a range? And they said anywhere from 0 to 13.5%. And I went, oh, so I went with 7. And I had just received an email just recently where they said the max will be 9.5. Now, I didn't really want to modify all of these to go to 9.5 because last year we only went up 3 and I think 3.5. So I figured if I left it at 7, that I should be safe. I hope to God we don't have 9.5, but you know, that's where I
the
left
hardest
it.
part right now.
Right, it is. That and oil.
Because you renew in September too, correct?
Yep.
Another thing to consider would be, I know you have cut 2 special ed techs, but if you should get a one-on-one or more than one student that comes in that requires one-on-one, then those would have to be put back in, correct?
Absolutely.
So by dropping those 2, we're assuming we're not going to get any one-on-ones. There's no place in the budget here to really cover if we have to add ed techs back in, correct? Is that a good idea?
You still have the grant.
Well, yes, we still have the grant, and we also, you know, the tuition line is always someplace, even though we're pretty close to that, we would have some play with that.
That's a concern of mine too, Judy. Also on that, the 2 ed techs, and I don't know how this works, I've been away from it for a little while, but if they, within a contract, these 2 here, whomever they are, if they are no longer in the program, do they bump somebody on the bottom? And if whoever they bought, a seniority issue, if they bump the people on the bottom, are those people they bump, and are they already specialty trained for something within the school? I'm just trying to figure out contractually how,
It
these
depends
people that are
on,
moving,
usually it depends on the level of ed tech. If their position is an ed 2, if they're an ed 2, or if there's an ed 2 position, or if they're willing to take an ed 1 position, if there's, usually that's the bumping order, right? It's seniority.
it's not just
But
seniority,
if
it's seniority.
It's seniority, I believe, I've got some contract people here that might be able to help me, but I believe it's seniority based on if they're qualified to take another job that's within the system that somebody else has that hasn't been here as long.
But I believe the 2 that have been identified are the last 2 that came in, based on what their
They don't have,
services were.
that, I guess that's my question, so they're not gonna affect any of the programs.
Can we do a review of, and it's actually germane to the conversation, do a review of the different line items involving personnel salaries? I've got like maybe half a dozen different lines, and I try to keep track from year to year about what it's going from and to get a sense of how that would affect the salary. So in Department 2200, it is in, I believe, it's stated in the explanations that we're at 2, and we're at 2, but we're staying at 2, right, teachers. And then the line right below it for the ed tech on Department 2200, I have listed for this current year 6 ed techs on that line, and is that where the 2 are coming from?
Yep.
So that's going to 4.
I would, I'm not sure where you have your, and I know we've done some shifting
Yeah, we've done some
within the year.
Because there are other ed techs in this part of the budget, and that's kind of where I'm
Yeah.
coming from.
Let me put something together for you as far as the ed techs, because I know we've had some shifts throughout the year.
Right.
You know, where we moved one from one department or one from a grant. And let me just put a detailed thing for you together.
Okay, that would
Okay.
help, thank you.
In other words, there are more ed techs that are grant funded and not
Yes.
a part, not a part of
Yes.
our budget.
Right. They're in the grant. They've been in the grant.
Okay, so but as far as this budget would be concerned, my concern is not necessarily knowing everyone that's in the school, but where it impacts the budget that we're examining.
Right, is that line for ed techs, for people?
So if it's going, say, for instance, down 50% and the ed techs are 50% of what they were, then there's
You know,
a
because it just
sense
says
of,
teachers,
sense
it's
about that.
2, and this would be 4.
But if on the other hand, there's not a change in personnel and maybe it's going up 30%, that's something that you'd want to say, well, what the heck's going on there? So just.
Let me just, because I
get a
have to
feel.
go back and look at what they
Yep.
actually budgeted for last year for people, which I'm not absolutely positive of, and I just assume, I'd rather go back and research it and look at it, and then give you real numbers
Yep.
instead of guessing, so.
That's fine. It's always better than guessing. Even if there's a little delay in there, not a problem.
Anybody have any other questions?
Questions about the entire special ed budget or just the first part of it? I mean, I'm not quite clear on exactly how much of the 4 pages here that we've actually talked about, or 3 pages of numbers.
So basically, the first page is the resource room and the self-contained rooms, which are basically all,
All the resource rooms,
yeah,
basically.
they're all
All
resource
3.
rooms.
It includes all 3.
Yeah, and then the second section is everything administrative in the middle. And then the bottom section of page 3 and the last of page 4 is all our contracted services, so like, our speech, our psychology, our occupational therapy, and summer transportation, and all the supplies that go with that.
Okay, just picking one out to start with here. The supplies on Department 2200, line 6100, item 6100.
Yep.
It's gone up significantly. I mean, obviously, if you start with a fairly low number, it's not hard to come up with 900% increase. But, so we had $100 of supplies, we were going to 1,000. Is that sort of a, gee, it's about time we replace some things, or is there something specific going on here?
Well, I think what we found is there have been some supplies that are more like bigger ticket items, like your stroller, and there's things that they actually didn't budget for that they really need. And, you know, there's a lot of smaller pieces of equipment type of thing that they need for the kids. And that's where all the supplies, it was just really looking at the number and knowing that you had 100 every year and it was like blown. So we figured it'd be better to make it more accurate.
And that's for 2 resource rooms.
Right.
So that's a realistic reflection of what has happened in the past?
Yes.
Is what you're saying, as
Yes.
opposed to...
And for 2 resource rooms. No.
It doesn't take very much if you get one student that comes in that has a lot of special needs that you're not equipped for. Things like changing tables, which we haven't
Right.
needed in the past, and
Right.
strollers and things like that.
Strollers.
It doesn't take very long to boot that up.
Right.
Um,
So just as an example, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Go ahead.
This year, we currently budgeted $100, and to date, we spent almost $700. And I know I've got another bill for a stroller in the other room, so it's gonna be, it'll be $1,000 this year, so.
That
I don't
seems-
know.
it-
On Department 2500, line 3300, employee training and development. So we have, it's going up like 266% from 1,500 to 5,500. Last year, I see like 1,249 expended, and then the year before was like 400 expended. Is there a specific,
Reason? Yep.
yeah, there's something coming up on the horizon that we know about, or is that more of a, yeah,
That's
let's
your
throw some money at
internal
that?
training.
Right, the safety care training that we're doing with all of our staff. It's the de-escalation of student
Okay.
challenging behavior, and so we're budgeting for that within the regular budget.
And is that expected to be sort of a one-shot thing for the 1 year?
Yes.
Because, just to get everybody up to speed?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Can you help me out here, Ann? Just so I can get the picture, been away from this a while. Your resource rooms have approximately how many children, number one, and they're there all day?
No, the resource rooms are just that, resource rooms. The students are fully included for the most part, and they may step out, if you will, for direct instruction. Very few students are actually in the resource room. There may be a time during the day, for example, at the 6, 7, 8 grade level, there's a tutorial. They also do have a math class in there for pull-out math. But for the most part, kids are fully included in the classroom with what we call supplemental instruction. So even what we call the self-contained room, there are very few students who are in there all day.
You do have self-contained.
Well, we call it self-contained, but it's a resource room. I mean, we don't,
Okay.
it's.
The terminology
this-
has changed.
Right, I'm sorry, I apologize. It is a resource room. For the purposes of the budget,
Yeah.
it's been called the self-contained room.
I tried to move.
Right, we tried to. But we didn't want to make a change around that this year. We'll make that change. It'll be another resource room and separate everything out.
Okay, just want to know where the kids are.
Yep.
All good questions. Anything else?
Well, I think I could go back to what was your name?
Debbie?
Debbie. What Debbie was saying, I'm thinking maybe, if they're on the same wavelength. You take the big, big three ticket items here that went down 27,9, 39,4, and 43,880 for those big ticket ones that you see. Well, that adds up to 111,000. So we initially said we're down 140,000. But you take the 72,000 out for gifted and talented, so we're less 68,000. So when you do the 111,000 minus the 68, you get up 42,900.
Very nicely put, thank you.
And then so you go, okay, why is it up 42,900? And then you look at, these 1,000s, 4,000s, 5,000s.
Right.
It's very quick to add up, the little.
Thank you.
Like physical
Increments.
therapy is almost 5,000 right there.
Huh?
Physical
Oh, yeah.
therapy,
No, the training went up 4,000,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
it does.
So our contracted services with our psychological and our speech, their salaries don't go up at all? salaries stay the same?
They're per hour, and if we need to supplement for extra days or extra time in the summer, we use the grant money for that. Whenever possible, we try to supplement with the grant money.
Should we get a new student that you haven't anticipated with high maintenance necessary, what provisions do we have? Do we have, will this budget cover that, or?
I believe
What
with
do you do?
with the staff that we have presently, that we will be able to manage that with the educational technicians that we have. As I have, to a certain degree, anticipated that we may have a student. So I took that into consideration when I made my adjustments.
And I just want to be clear on the two ed techs we're talking about. So when you take the two ed techs out of special ed, do you just put them into the regular education program, or are they losing their positions?
Well, one will be reassigned, and two, at this point, unless, for some reason we have attrition of someone leaves, the last two hired are those eliminated at this point. They do not have a position. Their positions would be eliminated, yes. But in order to present a responsible budget, I need to consider the enrollment of the student population, and I would be doing a disservice if I hadn't made all the assessments, and with the understanding that we would be able to adjust for a new student.
Looking at the number of students that you had, I noticed that like the 5th and 6th grade, one had 7, and then this year they'll have 2 or whatever, but some of it, then the 6th grade had 2, and now we'll have 7. Are they staying more in an age range as opposed to education ability?
I'm not following your question.
I don't have the piece of paper on that, I stuck it back in my bag.
Okay,
You had
so-
a breakdown of all the.
Right.
I thought it was that, Eric.
So, for example, these are the actual students in the
Right.
classroom that, per grade level.
Right. But in the 5th grade, I think you had 7, and next year will be 2, and then in the 6th grade, or 4th grade or something, but the 2 grades, it looked like the kids were staying back a year or maintaining the same grade level, no?
No.
Yes, that's it, thanks.
They just move along in numbers.
On grades,
They just move along in
Right,
numbers.
they're just
you have-
moving along to the grade, unless there's a mistake there somewhere.
grade 6, you had 2. Next year, you were expecting 7. In grade 7, you had 8, and next year, you're expecting 2. Are they,
Because they moved to the next grade level.
Because they moved.
Right.
So this one's doing.
Put a diagonal.
They're going up in grade level
If
every
you
year.
draw a diagonal line,
Yeah,
So-
diagonal.
These two
Okay,
will
am I
go into
just
high
reading
school.
right? Okay.
And
They're
these
moving-
8 are
moving.
moving up here.
okay, and those
These 2 are
7?
moving up here.
Okay,
So,
sorry, thank you.
so Debbie, there may be a different number in one of the columns because we may have lost a student,
Nope,
to
that's fine.
discharge.
It was me, if my eyes are backwards.
Those,
It does.
it's confusing me now.
does anyone have any other questions about the special ed budget?
Any board comments?
Before we adjourn, I'd like to say something, if I could, Judy.
Yeah, sure.
Are we all done with the budget talks?
Are we all done with budget talks?
Yes.
Okay, go
Special ed, I
ahead.
think. yeah.
I'd just like to congratulate 2 Marines. One of them is Brandon Stanton, who graduated from boot camp this past week, and Colin Boisvert is also a Marine. And the principal and I have been working on students that have graduated. The end result, why we're all here, actually, is hopefully what these kids do beyond their high school and their lives. And it just started out as conversation, but as we started researching some of the kids that graduated from Acton Elementary, it's just become unbelievable. So what Trish is going to do is she's going to start, I've been talking to parents and students and everything. Right now, we're starting with the kids who are currently seniors in college and we're gonna work our way out, just so the public can understand what's going on with some of these kids from Acton. And Trish is gonna keep a binder of all the kids she's met. I think she met with a student, was it today, Guzman?
Just before break, Brandon Guzman came in. He was visiting, he's actually a teacher in China. And,
We all get to meet him.
yes, surprise visit. I'm excited that Jim is so willing to share his passion for finding out where these students are. This is my 24th year in Acton, so I know there's a few teachers that are a few more years here than I am. That year that I started here in 1990, those students are now turning 35 this year. And we have in our school many students now. But some of the work Jim is doing is just exciting to know what they're up to. So Shana McAllister graduated early with a bachelor's degree in culinary arts and hotel restaurant management from New York's Culinary Institute of America. I love it when she would visit because we always benefited from her cooking. Shana is now the assistant head chef and assistant manager of a 5-star rated Husk restaurant down in Charleston, South Carolina. So she's doing fabulous. Emily Marquis, now I do start to feel old though, I really.
These kids are all seniors in college right now, but we're
So
gonna go.
anticipating that to the 4th year out of high school, that she'll be graduating this year with a double major from the University of Southern Maine, and she graduated from the United States Army Basic Training as well. She went through the ROTC program. She's going to serve 4 years with the U.S. Army, and she's applying for Officers Training School, which, knowing Emily, will be a given. Nicole Richard is a biology major at USM. She's on the Dean's list. She's been accepted to St. Joe's Nursing for September. Again, a benefit of staying in Maine, I think, is that she's able to transfer her credits towards the nursing degree, and she'll graduate as a nurse in May of 2015. And Courtney Mooney, our traveling gal. She attended, do I pronounce that Goucher College? Goucher College in Maryland for a year on academic scholarship. She also studied abroad in Sweden for a year with their intern program. She is now transferred back to USM as a full-time student, and she was a member of the Dean's List recently. So I'm excited that Jim is willing to work on this with me. I'm trying to think, the binder is one way. I'd like to do a more visual for others to see. I don't know if our walls are big enough to do a timeline.
I don't think so, I know.
But I'm really excited, and Jim, I really appreciate that you're doing this with this, because I do think it's exciting to be able to see the impact. And some kids that maybe we worried about and struggled, to hear how they've pulled themselves together or reached new things.
Taken a different path, but they haven't quit. Our town treasurer, she was one of the first classes. She was an Acton Elementary student, wasn't she?
Yeah, I had her in class too. That's how
Yeah.
old I am.
So, but we're good.
We really want to go back. Mr. Cordy went through the Acton School.
That's way back.
What year was 8th grade, Dave?
What's that?
What year was your 8th grade?
78.
But some of the stories are unbelievable, and Trish is gonna try to, we're gonna try to mention 4 or 5 students every single, if we could.
Yeah.
You know, just and every one of these kids that you talk to, we've talked to them all, the impact that this school has had on them, from first grade, I mean kindergarten right through 8th grade, the impact this school has had on them is unbelievable, you know, so.
Well, it should be on the website, the school website. And why couldn't it be a grab, have you gone to Acton School, tell us where you are, type of little click-on thing, Mike Corey, wherever you are.
Well, I do have an Acton alumni Facebook page that was started, and I have tried to reach out in that direction. Kristen Booten was also here when, I forget her new last married name, but when Brandon came by. But that's a great idea, is to reach out in that direction as well. I'll talk to Mike about some sort of simple page that we can keep adding to. I'm sure they don't mind, and they may be surprised that they've found their classmates. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
so.
Jim, you've got a senior at Poly. What's she doing?
She's on these
she's gonna graduate.
Right.
Dean's
He mentions
list as
everybody
well.
else, but
Didn't mention the fact
Yeah.
that he had a couple of girls on the Dean's list too.
That's right.
Kids.
Mr. Humble.
So, It should be fun, and yeah, it's already fun finding what they're all doing, so. A lot of great kids, too.
Yeah, good kids.
Any other questions or any other discussion about the budget?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around, I'm sorry, the ed tech situation, because according to these numbers, this year we have 41 special ed students, and next year it's projected to be 40, so it's the same amount. And I'm trying to play with numbers here, and it looks like we have 11 special ed techs. We're gonna cut 2, that puts us down to 9. 4 are one-on-one, that leaves 5, which means that's 1 per every 8 special ed student.
We don't have, not all of those are one-on-ones. They are varied. They're interchangeable.
All right, I don't know.
I just feel like, excuse me, Tracy, but I interrupted you, but I just feel, that some of these people, I'm not sure how long these ed techs have been working or whatever, but there should be some stability for them too. I understand what you're saying to be, you have to do what you have to do to be responsible for the budget, but it just, if there's only a difference of 1 student, a number.
No, I don't think there's a difference of 1 student.
That's what it says in the paper. It said we have 41 this year and 40,
Right now it's
41, and then 40 projected for next year.
Right, we had 47.
But that was the year before.
No, that was in December.
That's beginning of the,
That's the beginning of the
December
school
of
year.
13.
We're
Down
down
from
7
47 to
students.
41 to
Alright.
40.
So
We're down 7 students. We've lost, basically, we lost one who was almost a one-on-one this year, so.
I'm a taxpayer too, and I guess from a teacher's perspective, I'm looking at, the special ed kids that I have in my classroom this year, and I'm thinking just, overall, we'd end up having 1 ed tech per 8 special ed students. And that seems overwhelming to me.
That's one class.
As a teacher, when an ed tech doesn't seem to take up that much of a budget that,
Well,
and they're
I would
so
argue
valuable.
that
They're
very valuable. I appreciate them. They know that I appreciate them, but this is a declining enrollment, and we need to be responsible and cognizant of that. I feel that the students we're not going to, the integrity of the program is not going to suffer.
Do you have like a ratio for how many, if it's not a one-on-one, do you have like a ratio that you go by with your ed techs to your special ed students, like if you work in a group? Because I've been a special ed tech here before, and
Well, students are mostly included, and right now we're well supported in the classroom. And if we have we have sometimes 2 ed techs in a classroom when we have a number of students. If we have more than 4, it depends on what the IEP says. It's very individualized.
Yeah.
So they're attached to certain students and grade levels. So we're pretty well covered.
I guess I'm just worried because I know 6th to 8th grade, the number's jumping from 12 to 17.
And I know I know you're concerned, and that's where we will reassign where we need to. For example, in the kindergarten, we have 8 students coming in that I know of, 8 regular ed students. We have 1 student who is identified who has a speech and language issue. We have a teacher who is attached to that classroom. We may have an ed tech in there most of the day. We would not have 2. And I think at this time, some classrooms have rotating 2 ed techs in there.
Maybe I said that wrong when I said the ed techs are one-on-one, when I'm thinking of the students that have
The one that
in their
need.
IEP, that they're supposed to have a one-on-one situation. I just want to make sure that it was thought out and, that it's looked at, those kids who have the one-on-one, those people are one-on-one with that student and aren't assisting other students.
and you have to go by an IEP, that's law, right?
Right.
How many one-on-ones do we have right now?
We have 2 solely, identified one-on-ones.
2?
2.
Can you break that down into grade span for us?
Okay.
You say two, is there one at K to 4, one at 5 to 8?
There's one K to 2, and there's one 3 to 5, or not really 1 to 1, it's more 1 to 2 at 3 to 5, and then we have 1 to 1, 6 to 8.
Is there an amount at the state level that says a special ed tech can only handle so many at one time? Like, you know, the ratio that way with the
Yeah, I
ed
mean,
tech,
I
not a
don't know the
teacher?
exact number. I mean, it's kind of best practice, and, you know, I'm sure there's a number, but we're best practice here. And I don't know the exact numbers. Probably in a group, there's no more than 4 or 5 that you would do in a reading group. That would not, especially if you're, depending on the ed tech, 1, 2, or 3.
Do you still have ones in the school system, or is there?
We only have
just
one.
twos?
We only have 1.
We only have 1, 2, and everybody else is S grade.
Any other questions about the special ed budget or comments?
So the crisis action team is always, it's always changing, depending upon the programs you bring in, or is that?
Well, I think we wanted to go with something that was highly recommended by the state and approved by the state. Other programs, some of us have participated in those programs. The safety care training was the most comprehensive and most user-friendly, and did more to de-escalate behavior rather than the physical holes. So that's why we went with safety care. And other school districts highly recommended that particular program. So, and just to your question, also the CPI, which is something that we participated in before, and I participated before, is a one-day program that really I didn't think was very good. I didn't think it gave enough direct instruction around de-escalation of behavior, so I'm pretty pleased with the safety care.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Any other comments, questions?
It's not like we won't revisit everything, every budget meeting.
Yeah,
There could be
yeah.
questions, answers to
Exactly.
questions.
You know, it's just, it's tough because we're definitely in such a transition, you know, with our declining enrollment. And of course, that does mean hard decisions, but it's so easy, you know, to look at stuff on a paper, but it still is real people that are, you know, it translates to real people. So, you know, knowing, you want to feel pretty darn confident that you're making the 100% right decision and looking at the numbers and every option that you can when it comes down to looking at people, you know, and people losing their jobs. I don't care if it's here or what, in any profession. A lot of professions are losing people. I mean, we know that, but it's easy to get caught up in the numbers and forget that, are we looking at everything? And I think that's kind of what I see here tonight, some anxiety over, you know, let's just make sure we're looking at our options and planning it out.
And I think we have to look at the bigger picture too, because we have a declining enrollment, but we also have a totally new approach to teaching as well, with standards-based, using the Common Core, and that's new to teachers, it's new to students, and it's very intense for all students.
But that's why I think in our staff development type lines, that's going up. You'll
Right.
see that go up
Definitely,
everywhere.
definitely.
Everyone can be
Standards-based
changed.
is proving pretty intense as far as the way the special ed world is looking at it too. You know, it's a radical change in some areas. So, I mean, it's a lot of factors. It's not easy.
No,
Not
and the
easy.
state makes you do these changes, and where's the money to back it up? There is none, so, and I think we get less every year.
Funny how that works.
And I think every year,
We gotta go.
We've gotten
I think
less.
every year since I've been on the school committee, almost without exception, the idea of cutting ed techs has come up, almost every single year. And we as a board have been very strong in saying, If we need them, show us that we need them, you show us that we really need them, and we're there. Because we're here for the kids, and if it's something that's gonna be really vital for the kids, then the board will support that. Because the general public really doesn't have much of a clue as to what ed techs really do. You know, I think a lot of them think that they run off papers on the copy machine and, do things. They don't realize the hands-on, per student responsibilities that they have. So we've tried to be really diligent about supporting our administration with whatever they've needed for ed techs, because we've seen what they do, and we continue to do that. We also have to be responsible to our administration and what they say their needs are, because they know what their needs are better than we do as a board.
But what happens too is, this is a snapshot. Last time we met, it was a snapshot, and then it all comes together. And I think once you have it all together, then you can look at the money figures. I mean, that's how it works.
And all this discussion is great, especially from the staff with inside the building. It helps us to understand. We don't know that, but you folks know, and the questions you're asking, but it opens our eyes a little bit to what's going on inside the building, So this is all just discussion right now, like Mary said, nothing's final.
And it's good. Anything else? If not, I will welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved, so moved.
Paul, did you have something?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
weren't we going to
sorry.
be talking about the stipends?